Okay, for the last speaker of this session, he will be discussing Nathaniel von Einsiedel and technocracy in Imelda Marcos' governance of Metropolitan Manila. So let us all welcome Professor Michael Charleston, Xiao, Chua of the Salle University, Manila. Professor Xiao, are you there?
Makasaysayang araw po sa ating lahat. I will probably the last person many people will expect to be speaking in this conference, nuancing the history of the Marcos era in the Philippines, approaches, evidences, and contestations. But despite the fact that I am an engaged academic, I am actually an advocate of a more nuanced, less radical approach on the telling of the history of the Marcos regime. Since I was a student in college, I even picked Imelda Marcos as a topic of my BA and MA thesis. The seemingly recent polemical approach was only a reaction to historical distortions, especially pertaining to human rights violations victims. Academic, I never let my politics get at hand with my scholarship. As a framework informally studying the Marcos regime, I use Xiao Salazar's concept of gahum and kaginhawaan to demonstrate that the conjugal regime, as possessor of the state's power or gahum, used it either to take away from people, kaginhawaan, or to give it away. This accounts to the nation's schizophrenic view of the Marcos regime. When I wrote my master's thesis on ang Maynila ni Imelda, isang kapanahong kasaysayan ng pagbabagong anyo ng Metropolitan Manila, 1965 to 1986. I interviewed some of the key players in the Metropolitan Manila Commission. Of course, Imelda Marcos herself, twice, Mel Matay, Vice Governor, and one of the earliest and main primary source was Nathaniel von Einsiedel. He is known today as a renowned urban planner who was once the founding commissioner for Planning of Metropolitan Manila, whom I interviewed in his Makati office on 17 January 2007. He wrote some of his narratives as well in some of these books. More recently, Metro Manila, My City, My Home, which was released during the pandemic. Known to many as Dinky, he became the youngest technical staff of the Philippine delegation to be sent to the Habitat 1, the United Nations Conference on Human Settlements in Vancouver, Canada, which will be headlined by First Lady Imelda Marcos. Einsiedel said she didn't know anything about what human settlements was about. He briefed Mrs. Marcos about it at her office at the music room at Malacanang, Paras, about land use, resource management, affordability for housing, on-site upgrading, and other concepts. She absorbed it like a sponge. She got excited about it, and parang wow, ganyan pala yan. Excited siya. Her address wanted to highlight how the regime implemented human settlements in Metro Manila. Mrs. Marcos, she was aware of the fact that Metro Manila is the gateway to the Philippines, sabi ni Einsiedel. It's the face of the Philippines as far as the rest of the world is concerned. So, what do you do in Metro Manila? What you do in Metro Manila is important. With Imelda's Bengali, Conrado Jolly Benitez, Einsiedel worked for the Philippine presentation, the proposed development plan to Metro Manila, a title which was not appreciated by Ms. Marcos. Wala namang katorya-torya yung ano eh. I'll assign one of my writers to work with you. Marita Manuel and Rodolfo Severino of the Department of Foreign Affairs joined them. Imelda tasked Severino to highlight Manila's importance not just as an urban center, but in geopolitics of the world as well. Manuel took care of the writing style. Her flamboyance was preferred by the First Lady. The technical report became the document Metro Manila, the City of Man. According to Einsiedel, kasi yung City of Man is para bang, that's what the human settlements approach, man at the center of development. Whatever development efforts is undertaken is for the benefit of man. But the document itself, ang laman yun was the proposed development, yung technical report. May dinagdag si Rod Severino, dinagdag si Marita Manuel, and then Marita practically edited while she edited the whole document, and it was printed. Several copies were brought to Vancouver. It was distributed to the Philippines as the Philippines' contribution to that conference. On the plane to Vancouver in 1976 to deliver her speech, Earth, the City of Humanity, Mrs. Marcos asked Dinky, ano ba yung position mo doon sa task force? Ma'am, part-time consultant ho, Einstein answered. Bakit part-time? Meron na akong trabaho eh. At that time, he was still employed under Luis Araneta. Mag-full-time ka na, Mrs. Marcos said, and told Onofre Corpus, bigyan mo ng appointment, transcendent, gawin mong permanent. And that was that. Despite his hesitation, Corpus told him, hindi, you don't say no. Tsaka anyway, in a way, this is promising work. You're right up there in the front lines. In looking back, why he accepted, he told me, at the stage of my career, I was not really interested in how much I was earning. It was really more in the challenge of the job. And I saw that what we were doing was really very challenging. So when we got back, I was given a permanent position. As a college architectural student at the University of the Philippines, he became a student leader who led protests against Marcos's move to bring troops to Vietnam. And while finishing his master's in urban planning at Columbia University, he led protests in our consulate in New York against the suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus after the Plaza Miranda bombing. But he felt. And then we started getting our fingers, sabi niya, into the pie and started seeing possibilities that we can contribute to change. So when I was appointed, I never felt and I never believed that it was because of any political loyalty. I felt, and up to now, still believe that it was because of my technical competence. Einsiedel, of course, eventually became, when Imelda Marcos was appointed by President Marcos as governor of Metro Manila with the newly created Metro Manila Commission. He became program director for the Metro Manila Development Planning Program of the Human Settlements Commission. And eventually, he became commissioner on planning when the Metro Manila Commission became a permanent commission in 1979. So si Mrs. Marcos as a leader, that's my next chapter, Imelda Marcos' leadership. As a leader, Imelda Marcos, of course, she wanted to present herself, according to Gerard Lico, as the Grand Kapatas. The Grand Kapatas. Kaya very interested siya sa mga architects. She practically united the feuding architects to become the United Architects of the Philippines. And of course, she was very interested of that because, as according to Ben Cervantes, she had edifice, complex. So, and of course, eventually, she became the leader of the Metropolitan Manila Commission, governor position, Metropolitan Manila Commission, who wanted to give the 11 basic needs of man. So, Imelda, lagi siya kinakarikature as crazy and erratic. The truth, of course, is more complex than that, no? Well, of course, Imelda became governor and eventually Minister of Human Settlements. Concurrently, dalawang sabay na position. So, Metro Manila, bilang entity ng 17 local governments, before in 1960s, late 1960s, early during the Marcos regime, he always lambasted it. Hindi nyo masosolve ang problema, kanya-kanya kayo ng banat. Walang mangyayari dyan sa ginagawa ninyo at nag-aaksaya lang kayo ng oras, pera at wala namang mangyayari. And in 1974, Einsiedel was one of those who made a paper recommending a metropolitan government for Metro Manila. No? Kasi nga, I'm going to now loosely quote from what he's saying, di ba? Hindi integrated ang police, no? Police movement, hindi integrated ang basura, hindi integrated ang response sa flooding, no? So to quote, hindi talaga nasusolve yung problema. Instead na operation ng kailangan band-aid ang nilalagay. Hindi effective yung solution. Bumabalik yung problema after a while. So there was already public clamor na yung mga mayors need to get their act together at laging lumalabas yun sa dyaryo. So, as governor of Metro Manila, of what eventually became Metropolitan Manila, Imelda felt her role was visionary. Yun ang role niya, visionary siya. So the regime took in technocrats to basically make her ideas become a reality. They're weird ideas. They may be grand and frivolous at first, but the role of Einsiedel and his team is to translate them into doable projects. So sabi niya, Imelda Marcos believed that the problem of the world is not resources but distribution. So since the Philippines is at the center of the world, she wanted an underground tunnel from Infanta Quezon to Manila Bay to connect the goods from Pacific Ocean to South China Sea. No? Lahat ng kayamanan ng West dadaan dito papuntang East. Lahat ng kayamanan ng East pupunta sa West dadaan dito. Atin lahat, todos los santos. This is what she told me during an interview. So to connect the East and West in Metro Manila through a tunnel, medyo weird, di ba? But of course, both Einsiedel and Vice Governor Mel Matay confirmed to me that the said weird tunnel was actually a planned road network, no, which would expand Metro Manila, no, actually, no. So yan, of course, andyan, alam natin no na may mga Metro Aid sila, River Aid, to clean Metro Manila, no. And of course, eventually, as minister, nandyan yung Bliss Projects, no, sa Human Settlements, Minister of Human Settlements, Imelda's Bliss Projects, which was actually housing projects plus a coordinated way to provide for all the needs of man. The bagong lipunan improvements of sites and services. Pero yung isang plano nila, since nagtayo din sila ng lungsod silangan sa Antipolo, no? Ay yung tinatawag natin na, and of course lahat ng services nandyan, including yung nire-resurrect ngayon na Kadiwa Centers, no? Na may mga basic needs of man, ay yung tinatawag na pag-expand sana ng Metro Manila to become to Quezon Province. So Metro Manila to Quezon Province so that it can become a city facing two major bodies of water. No? So ano ba yung dynamics ng ano? No? So parang medyo weird, 'di ba? Pero ano ba yung sinasabi ni Einsiedel na dynamics working with Mrs. Marcos? So, hindi namin to quote, hindi namin siya basta-basta binablanko. Parang sasakay ka kapag meron siyang mga bagong ideya and then hinihintay ko na ulitin niya at least 3 times. Otherwise, I don't lift a finger to do anything. Pag madalas niyang binabanggit, ibig sabihin nun, medyo seryoso siya. Well, of course, there are times na magbibigay siya talaga ng instructions na pag-aralan niyo to. But pag medyo madalas niyang mabanggit ng team mo, mag-umpisa ng mag-conceptualize. Ano yung possibility? And then gagawan usually ng terms of reference yan and will try to get a grant. That's why yung kalsada nga, yung papuntang Infanta Quezon, nakuha namin yung JICA, but yung iba na like the tunnel, yung bridge, ayaw i-pick up yung ng mga grant-giving agencies, yung pagpapalit ng Colgante Bridge, no, to a more stylish bridge. Kasi tingin nila weird masyadong too up in the sky. But ginagawa namin yun ng parang concept paper na kunwari, yung reclamation na ito, kunwari yung vision para sa area, itong possible development para dyan, this is how much it will cost. So then we submitted to Mrs. We said, okay, study it further, then we go into the details or written secure grant funding from some donor agencies. So ganun. But we also, in the concept paper, identify what are the major difficulties that can be expected. Like in the reclamation from the cultural center all the way to Bulacan. Ibablock mo yung outlet ng Candaba Swamp in the Pampanga River Delta and that place is perpetually flooded. Grabe ang baha doon. So yun ang consequences pag ginawa mo yan. May impede ang outflow ng floodwater, especially during high tide. So you can imagine the destruction ng inland. Well, pag nabasa na ni Mrs. Marcos yun, quiet na lang siya noon, hindi na niya uulitin sa amin. But it does not stop her from mentioning it when she speaks in public because parang ano siya, visionary. Yun ang role niya, visionary siya. So, in this case na talagang may dictatorship nga na nangyayari, ano? May dictatorship nga na nangyayari, no? Eh meron kang iilang mga programa lamang na I mean may mga initiatives ka na pwedeng ipasok. Innovations big and small. So siguro bibilisan ko na because I only have 5 minutes. I will only have around 4 minutes. Huh? Ito, no? Um, One innovation would be, ayaw ng mga mayor yung integrated Metro Manila Land Use Plan. Gusto nila kanya-kanya kasi that's the bargaining chip sa mga businessmen. But the problem is, dahil nga martial law, gusto ni Einsiedel na ipatupad yung tinatawag na Metro Manila Land Use Plan. At ang ginawa niya, nagkaroon siya ng mga workshops, no? Ni-workshop niya ito with some of the engineers, city engineers, no? And mayors, city engineers and the municipal engineers para makita nila to standardize all the maps, big and small, maging standardized na. And then yung colors na ilalagay diyan, anong color sa mga sa land use, residential, industrial, no, commercial. And then ano yung ideal sa bawat city, tinanong niya. And then Einsiedel will integrate it in a Metro Manila perspective para hindi, kumbaga, hindi nagkakaroon ng overlaps or yung tinatawag natin ng mga, kasi di ba pagka yung mga boundaries yan, makikita mo na hindi pala bagay yung planning. So eventually what happened was, Einsiedel told Mrs. Marcos, no, meron na ho tayong mga proposed land use plans about town and city. So maganda i-approve nyo sa kabuuan for Metro Manila. So what happened was, Imelda Marcos he convinced Imelda to call all the mayors on national television. No? And ang nangyari ay, Imelda Marcos just said, eto ang mga mapa ng land use plan ninyo, pirmahan nyo isa-isa. So wala nang magawa yung mga mayor, no? At eventually, sinabi ni Einsiedel may ordinance. Etong ordinance, no? Sinain niya ngayon yung ordinance in front of the mayors. Wala na talagang nagawa. So this land use plan, no? So parang naisahan mo kami, sabi ng mga mayor sa kanya. Pero this land use plan was enforced until then, no? This was around 1978 to 1986, no? Strictly enforced, no? The other, of course, hindi na yan. People power, of course, relegated all of that to the mayors na. Another innovation would be the capital investment portfolio, which according to Einsiedel is a system of synchronizing the plans and programs of all national agencies in Metro Manila. So, yun na nga, no? Dahil nga, sabi, no, there's lack of coordination among government agencies in implementing projects in health, education, public works, transportation, approved by the various ministers without coordinating with the MMC. Sabi namin, dapat coordinated yan. So, Einsiedel puts it in simple terms, ukay sa kalye, maglalagay daw public works and drainage, magukay, babakbakin yung kalye, pagkatapos nakalagay na, tatakpan. Dadating naman itong maglalagay ng telecommunication lines, babakbakin na naman kasi nasemento na. So, aside from coordination, the CIF aims to set priorities among the limited resources of the government. And this happened because Mrs. Marcos, sabi nga ni Ignacio Bunye, it is safe to say that the MMC during the martial law era was an absolute one-woman rule, and the chief executives of the integrated local governments were mere figureheads. And Einsiedel said, I was anticipating na hindi forever yun, dahil si Mrs. Marcos nga ay may pagka-erratic, and that's why eventually Einsiedel have to put together three agencies of the economy, NEDA, the Department of Finance, and Department of Budget, so that kapag nagsama-sama na yung mga agencies at nagbutuhan sila, may mga biases ang education for schools, ang DPWH for infrastructure. So ang nangyayari ay nagkakaroon ng isang boto yung economic team dahil wala silang biases. So anyway, ito yung mga pictures ito yung mga picture ng mga mayor nung coordinating ng land use, and then of course yung presentation kay Mrs. Marcos. So, yun, eventually of course, what happened was the CIF's effectivity was tested after the assassination of Benigno Aquino when the popularity of Marcos took a nosedive, and eventually, sabi nga ni Einsiedel, ang ginagawa na lamang nila, they are already just doing yung tinatawag na imbis na for development, susundin yung plano ng CIF, and napupunta na lang sa pagtugon dun sa pagkawala ng popularity ni Marcos, like more housing, more basic services for the people. Yung pera sa LRT na dapat nasa LRT, pupunta na yan sa mga basic needs. So eventually, of course, what happened was, to cut the long story short, nagkaroon ng concern si Einsiedel about how Metro Manila is running, because maganda yung hangarin, but because a lot of the things are already being done by the mayors, nagkakaroon ng mga special projects na dapat temporary pero hindi natatanggal yung mga tao. So the MMC became bloated, and eventually Einsiedel wanted to restructure it, and she gave something to the First Lady, which the First Lady was blocked from reading by those who do not want this restructuring. And so what happened was, eventually, to cut the long story short, napunta sa opposition yung position ni Einsiedel, and eventually may mga nagalit kay Einsiedel because of that, and kinasuhan siya for some reason, pagbibigay ng permit ng hindi tama, and so he wanted to resign, but Mrs. Marcos wanted a book published first for the 10th anniversary of the MMC. And when the book was published, pinaalalahanan ni Einsiedel, ma'am, magre-resign na ako, yung resignation ko. And so what happened was, hindi na siya pinag-resign because of ang nangyari nga ay nagkaroon na ng EDSA Revolution. November na yon of 1985, at nagkaroon na ng mga kung ano-ano, mga pangyayari. But that said, Cory Aquino, when she assumed office, sa pagtatanggal niya ng mga tao na mga in-appoint ni Marcos, she was asked to stay. And hawak ni Cory, nung nag-meeting sila, no, wag kang mag-resign, we want you to help us. And then hawak niya yung papel na position paper. And this became the basis of Cory Aquino's transformation of the MMC to the Metro Manila Authority. So, yun yung nangyari. And I think for some years pa, Einsiedel was able to stay as part of the MMC. And so, yun na nga, in nuancing the history of the Marcos years, in weighing the achievements and faults of his regime, let us remember that it was not only the Marcoses who ran the government. It will be simplistic to blame them for command responsibility. We should take into account that there were people who made the abuses possible, who made the good things possible as well. And then there's Nathaniel von Einsiedel, the technocrat who had made a positive impact in what made the Metropolitan Manila government one of the few better original ideas of the Marcos regime. Thank you very much, and thank you for your trust.
Thank you very much, Professor Chua, for your presentation. So now we will move on to the question and answer. We open our floor for questions from our attendees. Okay, so I think we could accommodate 3 to 5 questions from our attendees. But first, I would like to read our first question. This is addressed to Professor Xiao. So, Sir Xiao, this is a question from Jessica Ling. Sir Xiao, may I ask what you think if these plans of Imelda Marcos to have a tunnel, what happened to our country? Magiging maayos po ba or worse?
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Jimenez, and to Jessie. Ganito lang yan, simpleng sagot. Because the tunnel is actually a road network passing by mountains, di ba? Kasi yung antipolo na yan, bubutasin yan, no? And then, para makapunta sa Quezon. Now, the only thing that it can do is actually to make the travel from Manila to Quezon faster, which will be beneficial for Quezon. No? I don't know if it will do something for world economy, pero ganun lang yun eh. Kasi if you have a port in Quezon, and then you can transport to the other side of Manila and then go to China. Eh, ba't yung barko hindi na lang dumiretso sa China o kaya sa Vietnam? Di ba? It's just the same, no? So, but seriously, yun nga, the problem was the Aquino government, when it assumed office, did not continue a lot of the good projects that would have been good for the MMC. Like, for example, yung Paranaque Spillway, for example, which have mitigated a lot of the floods that happened after the Marcos years. So, yun yung nakakalungkot lang. But again, that is what happened. No? The lack of continuation in the projects.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Chua, for that answer. So, the next question po is for, balik po tayo kay Professor Chua. Professor Chua, what do you think is the weakness of Imelda's ideals and projects that were implemented in Metropolitan Manila during her time as governor?
Well, first of all, no, as Imelda envisioned them, alam mo naman si Imelda he wanted them grand. Okay? I mean, Imeldific is Imeldific, di ba? So, for example, ito yung weakness niya, no? Dahil nga erratic siya, for example, may mga, one example would be, kapag may mga naipatayo na, pag naayawan niya yan, she will have it knocked down. So, ito yung unang pinag-usapan. Pero nung nakita na yung finished product, hindi na nagustuhan, the houses can be knocked down. No, in her and doon gagawa ng paraan, of course, yung technocrats to talk her out of it or na hindi masyadong but there was one time na may rattan chairs na dinala sa nilagay sa Independence Day parade, no? So nung night na alas 7 ang parada, alas 2 ng umaga dumating si Imelda Marcos. Mahilig mag-site visit ang lola mo. Tapos sasabihin niya ganyan, naku, rattan chairs ang ginamit nyo, 100 chairs na rattan for the VIPs. Masisira ang mga gown namin dyan, sabi niya. So, si Einsiedel, sabi niya, pumunta sila ngayon sa wala na silang mapagkukunan ng chairs So, ang nakita nilang chairs ay yung nasa Folk Arts Theater na nakasarado. So, they have to wake up the director of the Cultural Center of the Philippines to have to open those doors. At galit na galit nga. And then eventually, in just a few hours, nailagay lahat yung chairs na palitan. What Imelda wants, Imelda gets. That's the weakness sometimes. No? Kung hindi na napipihit nung mga technocrats niya. No? And yun nga, that accounts to bakit a lot of people have a positive impression of the Marcoses is really because they were helped by these people who, again, judgment yan sasabihin mo, tinulungan nila yung mga diktador na maging successful yung kanilang regime, kaya ngayon yung mga tao parang nagka-clamor sa diktadura, napakapangit ng kanilang kontribusyon. But the other thing, the other perspective of that is they made the situation bearable at a time when there would have been more heartbreaks than what it was, no? Kasi ang dami nang namamatay at that time through the human rights violations. Kaya it's schizophrenic tayong mga Pilipino about them. Kasi yung ginhawa, tagapagbigay ng ginhawa, tagakuha ng ginhawa, at taga-bulsa ng ginhawa. Di ba? So yan ang nangyari dyan talaga.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Chua. I think we've already balanced the pros and cons of the Imelda Marcos as governor of Metropolitan Manila. Another question, I think this is a follow-up with regards to your answer earlier. In connection to our current administration, do Imelda Marcos' plan has a resemblance to her son's infrastructure roadmap?
I don't know any plan of the present administration. In fact, I don't see any movement. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. No, I'm just being. If there is, they probably do not. Why are they not using their social media to? Bakit nung panahon ni Duterte sinasabi na build, diba? Build. Baka nga yung build pa ang mas malapit kay President, because the Marcoses knew that institutional changes, although very, very good and long-lasting, they are not remembered by the people. Look at Noynoy Aquino. Institutional changer yan. No? But what happened? Ang naalala ng tao, hindi nagtapos yung mga infrastructure niya. So, yung infra na alam ni Marcos, alam ni Gloria, alam ni Duterte, yan ang naaalala ng tao. That's why they kept on doing infra. I don't know about Bongbong, no? I will have to research about that. But I hope that his social media team will be more active in bringing out what he wants to do, if he had something to do. He had plans to do something. I'm very sorry, no? I did not want to be offensive.
Okay po, Professor Chua. Another question po, for you po again, Professor Xiao. It is often stated by people that our cinema, arts, and entertainment industries flourished during the Marcos regime. In broad strokes po, how would you evaluate the impact of the Marcos regime to these industries?
Okay, mabilisan so that there could be questions to other speakers. Ano? Number one, ayaw nila na may nagko-komentaryo sa radyo and television. That's why nag-flourish ang mga music. Just play music in the radio. 3 OPM music every hour. So, less commentaries in politics, more music. So, nag-thrive talaga. And the thriving of these people, nasa patronage politics pa rin. Yes, it thrived. Wala akong nakitang ibang pangulo na may vision about the arts. And Marcos, actually, Ferdinand Marcos, knew the value of history. Sa totoo lang. No? So, binigyan niya ng projects na yan ay maisulat. But again, nangyari on patronage din. 'Di ba? Para magkautang na loob yung mga artists. Now, again, there are also people na nakulong noon na eventually tinulungan ng isang writer na malapit kay Marcos na makawala. Eventually, they all wrote in a magazine of the Marcoses. No? Pero ang sinusulat nila, history. History literature, hindi na politics. Which, of course, nag-bloom din yung historical literature natin because of that. Now, of course, when you look at the achievements of the Marcoses when it comes to culture, you have to account what we call the counterculture, which is ito yung kulturang bayan ng mga naghihimagsik na nag-flourish din at that time. Because when you have oppression, nagkakaroon din ng flourishing of the culture of resistance. So, yun yung magandang nangyari nung panahon ng mga Marcos, both positive and negative in culture. Kaya nga nagkaroon ng ang daming mga masterpieces in film na lumabas pro and anti because of this cultural wars that was happening at that time.
I really like to point out your answer po, yung sabi nyo kanina na the richness of culture during the Marcos period was a product not only by the government but also by the counteraction from the people. That's very a good point, Professor Chua. At this point po, before I present the key points of this panel, do you have other questions po, Dr. Durami?
For Xiao, I was just curious, how do you deal with the fact that you work for or you're very close with Imelda and all this kind of stuff, and then as you know, the people are easy to label people as apologies, right? So how do you deal with that? Have you experienced that kind of difficulties?
Well, the first time I experienced it was in 2011. In one of my columns, I wrote about Imelda in a more positive way. And then I mentioned the human rights violations, but the whole article was actually about her achievements. And parang give credit to where credit is due. It's okay. That was my stand at that time. And then I felt some of the human rights victims were messaging me were commenting and said, why did you change, Xiao? Parang, hindi naman ako nagbago, nagsabi lang naman ako ng, di ba, of the other side of the story, no? Mga human rights victims, na kapatid ng human. So parang after that, parang, oh my God, parang hindi na pala pwede yon. The lines were drawn from 2011, 2010, 2011, after Noynoy became president, na parang, If you're with us, you're with us. You're against us, you're against us. And that was used eventually. So how do I deal with it now? No, I did not work for Imelda,
Oh,
but
sorry, yeah.
I was able to interview her, and and yung thesis ko was really, a lot of her was her voice, even if I was critical. And some people were even saying na I got schizophrenic when I read your thesis, because I don't like the Marcoses, but they've done so much in that sense. And sabi ko naman, hindi lang naman sila yan. There are many people who help them. But that said, yun na lang, no? I know who I am. I know my stand. I'm basically anti-dictatorship, pro-human rights. And people, I already have the record to show that this was my stand for the longest time. So I think I should never be afraid to say the other side, to tackle the other side. The problem here is, even if I am probably one of the people who is flexible about this, ang tingin talaga sa akin ng mga pro-Marcos, talagang they will not listen to me. They canceled me already. So, well, I cannot do anything about that because that's politics already. But hopefully, all of this will subside when all these families will not run anymore, and the evidence of truth and the evidence based on methodology will prevail in that situation, as it always has been in history. Politics will fade, but scholarship will remain.
Thank you, Xiao.
Thank you very much po, Sir Romel. I think Professor Chua is is the best example of what we're talking about earlier this morning, that you could recognize the pros and cons, and at the same time taking a stand on your own. Okay. So I think that's all. We would now wrap up our panel session for this afternoon. So before we end, let me share to you the key points or takeaways that I think I can share to you regarding our panel session for this afternoon. So number one, I think this is very unique for me as someone with specializing in economic history, because our first two speakers, Professor Gatmaitan and Professor Kising, focuses on the relevance and importance of the judiciary to the study and writing of history. Something that is a few people are recognizing in the historiography or in Philippine historiography, is recognizing the importance of judiciary and their decisions, and they highlighted SC decisions become a part of social history and not just of legal in the legal sense or legal aspect. Next is, history is not just enclosed with the lens within the lens of the historian. So earlier, Professor Kuraming posed the question: is history just for the historians? But at least we're given here the opportunity that history is not just for the historians, but it is also for those who are interested in history, because history connects us. It is what kind of this interdisciplinary. But also, again, it is not enclosed within the lens of the historian, but also of those who have an interest in history, which includes lawyers. Next, courts as historians, as mentioned by Professor Kising earlier. And last but not the least, additional cases and decisions could be a source of history because of their established facts. And last but not the least, Professor Chua earlier discussed and gave us an idea on how Imelda Marcos governed the Metropolitan Manila through the employment of technocracy through Nathaniel von Einsiedel, to put into reality her vision and ideas for Metropolitan Manila. So I think that's all for today. Thank you very much to our dear speakers, Professor Gatmaitan, Professor Kising, Professor Chua, for sharing us your expertise. Okay.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much to all the very interesting papers. Thank you.
Salamat
Thank,
po.
Salamat din. The
thank you po.
discussion is really good.
Yeah. Again po, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our organizers for organizing this conference for us. We have Professor Krami and Sir Carl Mendoza, De La Salle University, Southeast Asia Research Center and Hub, Tala, an online journal of history. Our supporters at HICA ng Pilipinas, Philippine Historical Association, and Philippine National Historical Society. Thank you very much po. So,
Thank you.
so I think this is the end. So we'll move on to the next part of the conference. I am the moderator for this panel. I'm Miguel Antonio Jimenez, saying all, thank you very much and have a good day.